Tonight I'd like you to fall asleep to this story called The Oscar Winner in My Bed.
Rajiv and I continued to write pilots we hoped would sell, but after producing The Room, Precious Meadows, and The Captain, we were ready to let the studios pay for our projects. Finally, we sold a web series called The Mascots to Endemol, the reality show company behind Big Brother and Deal or No Deal. They wanted to get into scripted entertainment, but our show was definitely not what they were used to making. It was a broad comedy about a world where corporate mascots are real creatures, not people in costumes, and they share a world side by side with humans. Think The Muppet Show. As a boy who had studied Jim Henson all summer in the Jenison Public Library, checking out books that had pictures of the London workshop where they made the Muppet puppets by hand, this was my childhood dream come true. I didn't dream of being a kid on Sesame Street in the 70s. I fantasized about being an adult who operated the puppets. I was obsessed with the names I saw on Henson projects. Frank Oz as Miss Piggy, Dave Gold as Gonzo, Carol Spinney as Oscar the Grouch. I knew all their names. And I quizzed myself on the bus rides to school. If only I applied myself that much to my studies. I could hear Miss Shirk saying to me. Now, with a budget of nearly $1 million, we had the green light, so the first thing to do was commission the mascot costumes. We found a designer who was willing to make them for about $6,000 to $8,000 a piece. A month later, Rajiv and I got to head down to the workshop. It was like traveling back in the 1970s and getting to work in Jim Henson's creature shop. That's how I felt, at least. Rajiv tried on chest hair Cheetah's head. I put on Trixie the Bunny's costume, rabbit breast and all. As executive producers, it was our job to work with the line producer and keep the budget under control. We rented a production office and went to work, hiring the director, the crew of 50 people, and the cast, actors playing human characters and stunt people who would play the mascots. We brought back Laura Silverman and Gareth Reynolds from The Room to play the lead characters. We even had to hire real-life stunt Dobermans for a heist scene in a factory. There were about 7 rewrites, and that should have been a sign of things to come. The executives had no idea what they wanted. They weren't used to scripts. They were used to reality show outlines and treatments. One day, they'd find the material hilarious. The next time they heard it, they felt it wasn't as funny. That's because you already heard the jokes yesterday, we would claim, as tactfully as we could. Jokes are never as funny or fresh the second time around. We produced the project with Sean Lambert directing and Ray Schnur scoring. It was great to pay all of our friends for once, and good salaries. It's amazing what you can do when you're paying with someone else's money. When they saw a rough draft of the first episode, they panicked. The scoring was temporary. Never underestimate the power of music. The comedy voices of the mascots hadn't even been added in. The jokes were being delivered by non-funny stunt people, with no microphones even capturing the lines. Of course it wasn't funny yet. They paid Rajiv and me enough money to live on for 2 years, and then let us go. For another few weeks, they hired another producer to finish the project. They didn't like what he did either. We were living the classic Hollywood story of writers versus the studio. I read about these conflicts for years, and finally I was in the thick of it. As frustrated as we were, we took solace in the fact that these things have happened from the very start. In the end, they never released the project and basically considered it a $1 million loss. I could have made 50 films in the Midwest with that budget. Around this time, 2007, I took a class and heard a valuable piece of advice from a screenwriter who was teaching it. Writers should write the movies they really want to see. It seemed obvious, but I hadn't realized I hadn't been doing that. I was writing for the market, for what I thought would sell. We had TV pilots set in writers' rooms, nursing homes, mascot fantasy lands, and teen fashion empires. It was time to write about something I really knew: Christian music. In what felt like a previous life, I had written nearly 200 articles for religious publications. Why not go back to self-financing and make a web series we really believed in? One of my favorite quotes is from one of my favorite writer-directors, Christopher Guest. Quote, "I am interested in the notion that people can become so obsessed by their world that they lose all sense and awareness of how they appear to other people. They're so earnest about it." End quote. If there was anything I knew, it was about earnestness. The intense religious conviction of the culture in which I grew up. That was fertile ground for comedy. We set out to outline 6 episodes of Jesus People, basing the characters on musicians I had interviewed throughout the years. Edie Patterson, Damon Foff, Lindsay Stidham, and Rich Pierre-Louis were hired as the band, Cross My Heart. We brought back Joel McCrary and Karen Whipple from The Room to play Pastor Jerry and his submissive wife, Mitzi. To bring more attention to the web series, we contacted celebrities through MySpace. You'll have to Google that reference. Shockingly, Kate Flannery from The Office said she wanted to play the Christian songwriter. Tim Bagley joined us for another collaboration. The brilliant Stephanie Weir from Mad TV also joined our cast to play a Christian romance novelist. We needed a real-life famous believer to cameo, so I put on an unfortunate turtleneck sweater and met Kirk Cameron at IHOP. He totally got what we were doing, but he said his audience wouldn't understand satire, which is most definitely true. So Victoria Jackson jumped at the chance, even flying from her home in Florida to Los Angeles to play herself in the web series. We shot 6 episodes at a church in Manhattan Beach, California. It was one of the most enjoyable productions of our lives, with total creative control back in our hands. We released them on Funny or Die and on YouTube. The first episode was selected for the front page of YouTube and went from having several thousand views to over 350,000 views in a day. All hell broke loose in the comment section. Christians versus atheists. Of course, that happens every day on the internet, but it was fun being the ones responsible for a modern-day holy war. Very quickly, the comments stopped being about our show. Believers damned others to hell. Non-religious folks shot back with name-calling and condescension. Naturally, I had experience in causing a stir. Back in Brazil in 1990, Andrea's parents got wind of the fact that their daughter was appearing in a soap opera. They said she'd have to pull out of the after-school project if her character didn't get saved and convert the rest of the characters. When that happened, I was one depressed 17-year-old producer. Schoolmates supported me, saying they'd miss the show. My dad even suggested I carry on and continue making it without Andrea. "You're not doing anything unchristian," he said. "Keep developing your skills. You can't let other people determine what you want to do." I listened to Sandy Patty's slider notes all over the song "I'll Give You Peace" and fell asleep in my hammock by 9:45 p.m. That was Brazil then. This was LA now. By 2007, I had learned to enjoy getting a reaction to my writing. And frankly, we weren't writing anything sacrilegious, we were just having fun with earnest characters. Once the web series had over 500,000 views, we decided to raise the money to make a movie by the same name. As we had with The Room, we started to have some fans at TV networks. Executives at Logo had actually seen the web series and loved it. NBC had also seen it, though they were afraid of making a show with religious themes. So we raised $50,000 from our friends and family and set out to make Jesus People the movie on our own terms. We used the same lead cast, but added some of our favorite returning celebrity friends. Mindy Sterling, Laura Silverman, and Sean Little. I was a huge fan of Robert Bagnall's work on Lisa Kudrow's genius series The Comeback. When I saw him at a bar, I approached him and went on and on about the project. He was kind enough to join the cast. We were beyond thrilled when Wendy McClendon Covey of Reno 911 agreed to play Kara's mom, and when Jennifer Cox of the Brady Bunch movie joined the cast to play a Christian radio DJ named Trinity Celeste. We needed an actor, last minute, to come down to my apartment in Culver City, our production office, and film a cheesy gospel music video. It would be totally improvised from the beginning to end, sung a cappella, and then Ray Schnurr would score the song later. Who had come through in a pinch before? We needed someone today. This video had to be made before filming so we could play it back on YouTube in the film. Octavia! Octavia Spencer had jumped in last minute to play the diva actress in The Room. We called her, and she thought it sounded fun. She hopped in her car and drove down to my apartment in the 2-hour Los Angeles traffic. What would she wear? With only limited time, I drove over to Goodwill and found a bright rainbow skirt with a flexible, elastic waistline. I had done all the costuming for the characters in Jesus People, but I didn't have a clue about women's sizes. When I got back, Octavia was already there. I apologized for asking her to wear an unwashed skirt from a thrift store. She laughed and put it on. This was an actress who wasn't afraid of doing anything ridiculous, if it made the project better. For the next 45 minutes, Jason directed Octavia in a hilarious song she had thought up on the drive over. Jesus is my good man. She filled it in every room of my small apartment, looking for a ham hock in our fridge, shouting to an imaginary neighbor named Pedro out the window, and rolling around on my bed, wondering why God hadn't given her a proper husband yet. She was fearless, and she was hilarious. And that's how I got a future Academy Award winner into bed.